My wife bragged to her friends. I found a younger man who actually has energy. I overheard everything. I didn't argue, I just hired the best divorce attorney in town and updated my will. Her face when she was served papers at her boy toy's apartment was priceless. I had no idea what to expect when I came home early from my business trip. I had booked a later flight to give myself some extra time. But when I arrived at the airport, the flight was canceled. I rebooked on an earlier flight, hoping to make it home sooner. By 3 in the afternoon, I was pulling into the driveway of the house we'd built together. Her car was there, so I figured she was upstairs. I thought about surprising her, but something stopped me on the stairs. I wasn't sure what it was exactly, a feeling, maybe, or a sound. Her voice drifted from the bedroom, and for a moment I stood frozen, listening. Something about the tone was different. The laughter wasn't one I remembered, not for months. Girl, I'm telling you, 32 has been the best decision I've made in years. My wife's voice rang out, louder now. I couldn't move, I just listened. He's got stamina for days. Not like some people who need a nap after 10 minutes. The words hung in the air, and I felt the blood drain from my face. I didn't move, didn't even breathe. I wasn't sure if I wanted to confront her, if I wanted to hear more, or just walk away and pretend I hadn't heard anything. But there was more. I could hear the friend laugh softly in response. My wife continued, "Oh, please. He doesn't suspect a thing. Too busy with his precious investments and golf trips. Honestly, I've been happier these past 4 months than I've been in a decade." 4 months. That's how long she'd been seeing him. The house, the kids, the dinners we'd shared over the years. All of it was a lie. It felt like the foundation of everything I had built, everything I had trusted, just cracked beneath me. My heart felt heavy, numb, like I was listening to someone else's life, not my own. I didn't know what to do. I didn't scream. I didn't shout. I didn't storm into that bedroom and demand an explanation. I walked back downstairs, grabbed my suitcase, and left. No words, no confrontation. I just drove to a hotel and sat there alone. I didn't cry. I didn't rage. I just processed. 23 years of marriage, 2 kids, a house, everything we had built together. All of it shattered in an instant. She had been mocking me to her friends, and I had no idea. For all these years, I had trusted her. The hours in that hotel room were quiet. The world felt like it had slowed down to a crawl. At some point, I called my attorney. He got me in touch with the best divorce lawyer in town. I didn't even blink. I didn't question it. I just acted. At 6:30 that evening, I scheduled an appointment for the following morning at 9. I called my financial advisor at 7. I updated my will shortly after that. Everything went to our kids. My wife was out. I didn't know exactly what came next, but I knew that I couldn't keep pretending. I wasn't going to be some fool anymore. I was done. The night in the hotel was long. I had barely slept, the sheets too crisp, the room too empty. I didn't know what I expected to feel, but I didn't feel anything. My thoughts were running like a machine, ticking off each detail of what I needed to do. There wasn't any room for anger or sadness. There was just action. I had to take control of everything before it spiraled further. The next morning, I met with the lawyer. Her name didn't matter, I realized. What mattered was the plan she laid out for me. She didn't ask many questions. Instead, she presented me with a blueprint for what would come next. My wife had no idea what was coming, but I would be ready. She asked about the house. "It's mine," I told her. I had bought it years before we married. It was in my name. My wife had never been a financial contributor in the sense that I had, not after she stopped working. That was a strange part of it. Really. We had built this life together, but she hadn't worked for the last 15 years. She had stayed home, volunteered, and met her friends for lunch, and I'd supported it. I thought that was what she deserved. I didn't ask about the financials at first. I just let her do all the talking. My consulting business was worth a couple million now, but it hadn't started out that way. I built it from scratch, and it was mine. She had stayed at home while I built my empire. That was the way I saw it. The lawyer understood. She explained how things would go down. We had the divorce, the division of assets, the whole process. There was one problem, though: evidence. My wife wasn't going to make this easy. It wasn't going to be enough to just walk in there. She'd cheated. The state required proof, and I had nothing more than a few overheard phone calls and some photos from a private investigator. That wouldn't hold up. Not without something solid. So, we made a plan. She'd be followed, and we would get that proof. That was the only way forward. I wasn't about to back down now. By the time I called the private investigator that afternoon, I already knew what I had to do. I had to go all the way. No more half measures. The truth had been exposed, but it wasn't enough. I needed more. The attorney arranged everything quickly. By Wednesday afternoon, the papers were filed. My will was updated. Everything was set in motion. I wasn't playing games. I wasn't going to let her spin this into something I could never untangle. Later that night, I sent a message to my wife, pretending everything was fine. Flight delayed. Stuck at the airport. Probably staying overnight. See you tomorrow, I wrote. She replied, "Okay, honey. Safe travels. Love you." I didn't respond, and I didn't care. The next morning, I sat down with the attorney, and we made things official. The lawyer went through everything: the house, the business, the assets, and I signed it. I was finally taking control. When I left her office, I felt something shift inside of me. For the first time in weeks, I felt like I was moving forward. The plan was in motion. My life was mine again. I had no idea what the next chapter would bring, but I wasn't about to let my wife's betrayal dictate it any longer. It was time to take my life back. The days blurred together. I was moving through my routine: work, meetings, phone calls, anything to keep busy. The more I threw myself into the day, the easier it became to ignore the constant knot in my chest. I didn't have time to feel it. Not yet. I had a life to preserve, a future to secure. That's what I focused on, pushing everything else aside. But despite my best efforts, I couldn't stop thinking about her. Not just her betrayal, but everything. All the years we'd spent together, the things I thought were solid, the plans we had made. They were all just smoke now. Gone in a flash. Every now and then, the reality would hit me in sharp waves. I'd catch myself standing at the sink, washing dishes, or walking down the hallway, and it would hit me. The memories would flood in, and I'd remember things that now felt hollow. Those moments we'd shared, those evenings of laughter, they felt like they belonged to someone else. Still, I kept going. I couldn't afford to break down now. Not with everything in motion. Not when I was so close to ending it. By Thursday, the private investigator had the proof, and I wasn't surprised by the details. There was no way my wife could have covered it all up. She wasn't even trying to hide the affair anymore. The PI had followed her to a downtown apartment complex, Unit 304. The photos were clear, her arriving at 6:07 p.m. Looking perfectly composed, not a care in the world. The next photo came just after 11 p.m. Her hair a mess, clothes different, all signs of a night well spent. And there, in the final shot, was him, her lover, at the door, his lips on hers, her hand resting on his chest. I didn't feel anger when I saw it. I just felt numb, like I was watching a story unfold about someone I didn't know. Someone else's life, not mine. I didn't immediately tell the lawyer. Instead, I sat on it. I let the photos sit in front of me. The undeniable proof that I'd been right all along. She had lied to my face for months, maybe years, and I had let it happen. But not anymore. I was done. The lawyer called me that afternoon, and we set a time to file. I had everything I needed now, the photos, the recordings, the statements. It was all lined up. She couldn't lie her way out of this. Later that evening, I sent her a message. I have a client dinner. I'll be late. Don't wait up. She replied as usual. Okay, honey, have fun. I wasn't having fun, but it was almost over. Friday morning, my lawyer called me again. It's done. We've got everything ready. I'll file by Monday. I felt a strange calm wash over me. This was it. The moment of no return. The next few days passed in a blur. I didn't speak to her much. We went about our lives like nothing had changed, but everything had. And it felt like the weight of it all was lifting. Just a little, piece by piece. I was done pretending. I was done with the lie. When Monday came, the papers were filed. It was official now. My life was changing, and I was ready for it. The days following the filing were quiet. Too quiet. I spent my time than everyone. On time in the office, focusing on the tasks at hand, ignoring the ringing phone and the text that came in. I didn't need to hear her voice. I didn't want to know what she was saying. Not yet. She didn't deserve that privilege anymore. But she was persistent. She called, left messages, texted. The tone was always the same: concern, desperation, confusion. She couldn't understand why I wasn't reacting, why I wasn't begging her to come back, or why I wasn't trying to salvage something that was long gone. It was that first night, after the papers had been filed, when I felt it. The weight of the choice I had made, heavy and final. There was no going back now. I had made my decision, and there was no room for second-guessing. No place for doubts. The real moment of change, though, came when I knew the papers were being served. My attorney had arranged everything, of course, but it felt surreal. Watching her find out, seeing her face drop when she realized what was happening, that was the moment everything shifted. I couldn't be the one to save her anymore. She had made her choice, and now I was making mine. It wasn't until Tuesday evening that I finally got the video from the process server. It was a quiet night, the kind that feels like everything is waiting for something to happen. I sat in everyone. I sat in my living room, watching her walk into the apartment complex, the place where she'd been meeting him for months. I knew it would happen. I knew the plan would work. But watching her face when the server knocked, watching her try to act like everything was still okay, was Different. She didn't scream at first. She looked confused. It was that brief moment, the second, when she realized what was going on. Then the color drained from her face, and she opened the envelope. The video didn't lie. She stared at it in disbelief, then at her lover, as though waiting for some sort of explanation. I could hear her voice crack when she asked, "What is this?" The server replied, "Divorce petition. Have a good evening." Her hands shook as she looked at the papers, still trying to make sense of it. For a moment, I thought she might collapse right there. She just stood there, in front of him, completely frozen. The lover, clueless as ever, tried to look over her shoulder. The look on his face was a mix of confusion and realization. But then she started screaming. I didn't need to hear the rest. I already knew how it ended. The pain she felt. It was the pain I had been feeling for months, years, maybe even longer, but I had moved on. And as much as it hurt to admit, I had already left her behind emotionally long before the divorce was even filed. The video ended with her standing in the doorway, tears streaming down her face. And yet, I didn't feel sympathy. It was too late for that. It had always been too late. The next morning, I woke up to the first of her calls. I didn't answer. She called 16 more times. The voicemail messages came in faster than I could delete them, each one sounding more frantic than the last. By the time I blocked her number, I didn't feel any satisfaction. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even upset anymore. I had done what needed to be done, and there was nothing left to say. She showed up at the house that evening, though. I heard her car pull up in the driveway and saw her standing at the door, her hand raised to knock. But then I remembered, just before I answered, I had changed the locks. I watched her through the window, her hands trembling as she tried to open the door. Her key didn't fit anymore. She banged on the door, calling my name, pleading for me to let her in. I didn't even move. I just stood there, watching her from upstairs, feeling nothing. She screamed at me, but I didn't react. I went to the window, opened it just enough to hear her. "Open this door right now," she shouted. "You can't lock me out of my own house." I let out a breath, and without hesitation I spoke. "Go to a hotel. We'll communicate through lawyers." "You can't lock me out," she screamed again. "This is still my house." "No," I replied calmly. "It's my house. I bought it before we were married. Check the deed. I've lived here for 23 years. You'll get compensated in the divorce settlement. I suggest you hire an attorney." Her words didn't matter anymore. The woman who had once been my wife was now nothing more than a stranger. I closed the window, turned off the lights, and sat in the dark. I listened to her banging on the door for another 20 minutes before she finally gave up and left. That night, I knew there was no turning back. This was the end. The days after the lock out were a blur of quiet tension. I kept my distance, avoiding her calls and any form of communication. Her texts came like clockwork, each one more frantic than the last. "Why are you doing this? We need to talk. I can't believe you're doing this over one mistake." I didn't respond. I had nothing to say to her. The truth had already been laid out, and there was no more room for explanation. She had made her choices. She had the affair. She lied to my face. She mocked me to her friends. The weight of it all felt suffocating at times, but there was something freeing in knowing knowing that I was no longer bound to her lies. Then came the phone call from her brother. His voice was tight with emotion, laced with frustration. "Bro, what the hell? My sister's devastated. She's at Mom's place, crying her eyes out." I didn't respond at first. The words seemed hollow, distant, like they were meant for someone else. "I'm sorry she's upset," I finally said. But I didn't make her cheat. I didn't make her lie. That was all her. I heard him sigh on the other end. "You can't just throw everything away like this, man. You've been married for 23 years. Think about what this is doing to her." "Think about what she did to me," I replied, my voice steady. "She had a 4-month affair behind my back, all while planning our retirement, all while lying to my face. She mocked me to her friends. You think that's something I can just get over?" There was a long silence on the other end. He didn't have a response to that. I didn't expect him to. "I'll be fine," I said, finally breaking the silence. "This is my decision, and it's final." I hung up before he could say anything else. I wasn't interested in hearing about her devastation. The only thing I cared about now was moving forward. A few days later, the first wave of legal battles hit. My wife's lawyer had filed for temporary spousal support. They claimed she had no access to money because I'd cut her off. They wanted $8,000 a month while the divorce was pending. $8,000. I laughed when I heard that. My lawyer, who was a shark in every sense of the word, didn't waste any time. "We've got evidence of the affair. She's had full access to your finances. She's been using your joint credit card. She's not broke. We'll counter with $3,500 a month." The judge sided with us. She got far less than she had asked for, but it was still more than I wanted to give. The battle was far from over, but it felt like a small victory. It was one step closer to closing this chapter, to finally being free. But things didn't stop there. In the weeks that followed, her side started pulling more dirty tricks. Week 1, I received an anonymous email accusing me of embezzling from my company. It was a baseless claim, designed to ruin my reputation. We had to hire a forensic accountant to clear my name. The investigation cost me $12,000 and 2 weeks of stress. Week 2, someone contacted 3 of my biggest clients, claiming I was unstable and going through personal issues that would affect my work. 2 of them called me directly. I had to explain to them what was really happening. They understood, but the damage to my reputation had already been done. Week 3, my wife's lawyer filed for restraining order. She claimed I had threatened her, and that she feared for her safety. The hearing was a joke. My lawyer laid everything out. He changed the locks because he felt unsafe. He hasn't threatened her. He's exercising his rights as the homeowner. The judge agreed. The restraining order was denied, but even after all this, she continued to twist the narrative. She posted a message on Facebook that night. After 23 years of marriage, sometimes people grow apart. I'm heartbroken to announce my husband and I are separating. Please respect our privacy during this difficult time. The comments flooded in, as expected. Her friends rallied around her, offering words of support. "You deserve better. His loss. You'll get through this." I didn't respond. I didn't post anything. Let people think whatever they wanted. I had no need to justify myself. Then came the deposition. My wife's lawyer tried to prepare her, but it was clear she was unraveling. She had to answer questions she wasn't ready for. My lawyer asked her about the affair. How many times did you meet him at his apartment? She hesitated, stumbling over her words. More than 10 times, maybe more than 20. Did you tell your friends about your affair? My lawyer pressed.
Yes,
She admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. But it didn't mean anything. Did you mock your husband to your friends, saying he had no stamina? My lawyer continued. I was venting. Girls talk, she said quickly, but it didn't matter. My lawyer had the evidence. One of her friends had flipped on her. A silent witness willing to testify against her. Did you say that you'd been happier these past 4 months than you had in a decade of your marriage? Yes, she whispered, her face pale with shame. The deposition didn't go the way she had planned, and I watched it all, feeling nothing but relief. The truth was out, and I was done. The next day, she tried to approach me in the parking lot after the deposition. Her lawyer stopped her before she could say a word, but she managed to scream, "You're destroying me. Is this what you want? To humiliate me?" I looked at her, meeting her eyes for the first time since the divorce papers were served. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel sympathy. I just said, I want a divorce. You destroyed our marriage yourself. I'm just making it legal. Her lawyer pulled her away, and I turned, walking away without another word. This was no longer about love. It was about survival. I had to protect myself, and now, it was too late for her to fix anything. The damage had been done. The weeks dragged on after the deposition. I thought things would calm down, that it would be over soon, but I was wrong. The more time passed, the more aggressive her side became. Every day brought something new, another email, another call, another threat. They were relentless. She was relentless. Her lawyer filed a motion for access to my business records, claiming they needed to properly value my company for the asset division. They wanted 10 years' worth of records. Every single transaction. I couldn't help but laugh when I heard it. They were fishing for something, anything, that would give them leverage. The last thing they wanted was a fair division. I had nothing to hide. My books were clean, but the hassle was unbearable. My lawyer immediately fought the motion. We couldn't afford them the time, or the cost of combing through 10 years' worth of files. But the other side didn't care. They just wanted to make it difficult. They wanted to bleed me dry. The judge finally ruled that they could only have access to the last 3 years. It wasn't the full victory I wanted, but it was something. Another small win. The truth was on my side, and I held my ground. But as soon as I thought I could breathe again, the next move came. My wife's lawyer sent over a settlement proposal that made my blood run cold. She wanted 60% of the house, 50% of the retirement accounts, and half the business. She also demanded $6,000 a month in spousal support for 15 years. I almost couldn't believe it. 15 years. I stared at the document, reading it over and over, but the words didn't change. It was the most ridiculous thing I'd ever seen. She was trying to take everything I had worked for, everything I had built with my own 2 hands. I called my lawyer, barely able to control my anger, counter it. Hard. We came up with a response that was much more in line with reality. 35% of the house, Nothing from the business since she never participated in it. And 5 years of spousal support. Maximum. The settlement was a joke, but at least now we had something solid to work with. The back and forth continued. More motions, more filings, more games. The toll it was taking on me was starting to show. I was exhausted, but I couldn't let up. Not now. Not after everything she had done. I wasn't just fighting for my money. I was fighting for my peace of mind. Then came the moment I knew would happen sooner or later. Her lawyer called, his tone matter of fact. She's agreed to meet. She wants to talk. Thinks you're overreacting. She wants to know if there's any chance to work this out. I felt a rush of cold air fill the room. It was the first time I'd heard her ask for anything other than what was hers. She was admitting, in some way, that she knew she had gone too far. But it was too late for apologies. I'm not negotiating, I told her lawyer. Tell her to take what's been offered, or we file. We're done here. Her lawyer seemed to hesitate, then agreed to pass on the message. The next few days were a strange mix of silence and anticipation. It was almost as if the calm before the storm, had settled in. I still had no idea what would happen next, but I was ready. I had made my peace with the process. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about putting this chapter of my life to bed. The final settlement offer came through the following week. Her lawyer had backed off significantly, realizing that there was no winning this for her. They had finally agreed to the terms, though not without a final round of negotiations. I ended up buying her out of the house for 40% of its value. My business was mine to keep. The retirement accounts would be split, but at least I didn't have to hand over more than I could afford. The spousal support was finalized at $4,200 a month for 7 years, contingent on her not remarrying or cohabitating. It wasn't the best outcome, but it was a fair one. I could live with it. The hearing was quick. The lawyers presented their settlement. The judge approved it without much fanfare, and just like that, it was over. There was nothing left to fight for. Outside the courthouse, I caught a glimpse of her, standing with her lawyer. Her face was pale, and her eyes red from crying. She looked at me, but I didn't return the gaze. I walked past her without a word, the finality of the moment settling in. When I got home, I poured myself a drink and sank into the couch. It was done. I had survived. But the real test, I realized, wasn't over. I had to rebuild. And for the first time in weeks, I felt the weight lift off my chest. The clarity I had been searching for was finally here. It was over, and I was free. The weeks after the settlement felt like an eerie calm. The house, once filled with the noise of daily life, was now a quiet shell. I had sold it, just as I had planned, not wanting to keep anything that reminded me of her. I moved into a smaller condo downtown, a place that felt like mine from the moment I stepped inside. It was modern, clean, a stark contrast to the old house with its heavy memories. I didn't need the past anymore. But it wasn't just about the house. I had to rebuild everything. My life, my routine, my sense of self. The business was thriving, and for the first time in months, I felt a spark of motivation that wasn't driven by anger or revenge. I started looking forward to work again. I even managed to land a few new clients, people who respected how I had handled the divorce, how I had kept my composure throughout it all. There was a strange sense of pride in that. I had walked through fire, and I had come out the other side stronger. I hadn't heard from her much after the settlement. A few texts here and there, always the same. I made a mistake. We can fix this. Please, just talk to me. I never replied. I had nothing left to say to her. She had made her choices, and so had I. The distance between us had grown so vast that I couldn't even bring myself to feel any anger toward her anymore. She was a part of my past. That was it. But there was still a part of me that felt the weight of the kids in all this. Our daughter, who had reached out to me first, still seemed torn. She didn't want to pick sides, but I could hear the pain in her voice every time we spoke. Dad, I don't know what to say. She says you're being cruel, that you're taking everything from her. I tried to reassure her, but it wasn't easy. You don't have to choose. I'm not asking you to. But you deserve to know the truth. She chose this. I didn't destroy our family. She did. There was silence on the other end of the line. I could tell she was processing, trying to understand everything. I get it, Dad, she said finally. It's just hard. It was hard for all of us. But the hardest part was knowing that she had already chosen her path. She had broken our trust, and now I had to live with the consequences. Our son, though, was more straightforward. He wasn't as emotional about the whole thing. When he called, it was short and to the point. Mom said you're divorcing her. That's true. Yeah, I answered. It's done. No going back. I get it, he said. That sucks, but I get it. You've got to do what's best for you. And that was that. He didn't need all the details. He knew enough. A week later, I got a call from her. She had reached out through a new number, but the tone was the same. I made a mistake, she said, her voice breaking. I can't believe this is happening. I never meant to hurt you. We had so much together. I didn't pick up the phone. I couldn't. The words didn't change anything. I had already made my decision. We were done. She was still trying to control the narrative, still trying to make me feel guilty for wanting to move on. The next time I heard from her was a Facebook post. She had posted a picture of herself, looking sad, and wrote, "After everything, sometimes life takes unexpected turns. I'm heartbroken, but I know I'll get through this." The comments poured in, her friends rallying behind her, as they always did. I didn't even bother to look. It was just another attempt to rewrite history, to paint herself as the victim. But I wasn't buying it anymore. The truth had already been laid bare. I knew who she was, and I knew who I had become in the process, stronger, more focused, and ready to move forward. So, I did. I spent the next few months settling into my new life, focusing on work, on personal growth, on the future. I didn't think about her much anymore. She was a part of my past, but she wasn't my future. And that was the most freeing feeling of all. Eventually, I got a call from her brother again. His voice was less urgent this time, more resigned. "She's still talking about you. Still blaming you for everything. She's not doing well." I sighed, feeling a pang of something, maybe sympathy, maybe regret, but it didn't last. I can't help her anymore. She made her choices. I'm not going back. He paused before answering. I get it, man. I really do. Just wanted you to know. The call ended, and with it, the final chapter closed. It was over. The final piece fell into place when I sold the last of the property we had together. The house was gone. The business was secure. The settlement was paid. The past, all of it, was sealed in a way I couldn't undo. But the future was mine to create. And for the first time in years, I was ready to start again. 3 months had passed. Since the divorce was finalized, the condo was better than everyone. Mine now, every inch of it a reflection of my decision to move on. It wasn't much, but it felt like everything. I spent my mornings in peace, watching the city wake up through the windows. I didn't miss the old house. The memories it held were too painful. Instead, this was a fresh start, something I had worked hard to build on my own. Work had become my anchor. I threw myself into the business like I hadn't done in years. New clients came in, and I welcomed the distraction. Every success, every meeting felt like a victory, not just for the business, but for me personally. I was finally proving to myself that I could succeed on my own, that I didn't need anyone to complete me. But even with the work, I couldn't escape the lingering thoughts. The quiet, long nights would pull me back to the past. I'd find myself thinking about the life I had lost, the marriage that had been destroyed by betrayal. And yet, I didn't feel anger anymore. I had let it go. The resentment, the hurt, it didn't serve me. What served me now was moving forward. There were days when I would hear from her, a text, a call, usually just her trying to make peace. "I've been thinking a lot about us," one text said. "Can we talk? I know I messed up. I'm so sorry." I never replied. She had her chance to apologize, and the moment for that had passed. I had already made my peace with everything. My focus was on the present. My life was my own now. The kids, though, still checked in. They had their own lives now, their own paths. My daughter came by one evening, a rare visit. She was quiet, unsure of what to say at first. "Dad, how are you really doing?" she asked. I sat down with her, the weight of everything in the room between us. "Honestly," I said, looking her in the eye, "I'm relieved. It's over. Finally." She seemed to take that in, her shoulders relaxing. "I get it," she said, her voice soft. I hate that it ended like this. I don't know how to fix it." "You don't have to fix anything," I told her. "This wasn't your doing. You don't need to choose sides. Just know that I'm okay." "I know, Dad," she said, a small smile pulling at her lips. "I'm glad you're okay." It was the first time in months that I felt like I could breathe a little easier. There was no more tension, no more fighting. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could let go. Later that night, as I sat on the balcony with a glass of wine, I reflected on how far I'd come. The man I was before the divorce, before the betrayal, he was a different person. I had been so consumed with holding everything together, with keeping the family intact, that I'd lost sight of myself. I had sacrificed my own happiness, my own peace. But now, that man was gone. He was part of the past. The new man, the one sitting on the balcony, staring out at the city with no regrets, was free. Free of the lies. Free of the manipulation. Free of the weight that had been holding me down for so long. I thought about my ex-wife, about everything she had done, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel bitterness. What I felt was pity. She had chosen a path that led her here, to this moment of destruction. I wasn't going to let her choices define me anymore. The future was wide open. There was so much left to do, so many opportunities to explore. I didn't know exactly what that would look like. I thought I was better than everyone, but I was ready to find out. For the first time in years, I could finally look forward without the shadow of the past looming over me. It wasn't going to be easy. There would be moments of doubt, moments when the pain tried to resurface. But I knew that I was stronger now, stronger than I had ever been. The next chapter of my life was mine to write. I wasn't going to waste it, and for the first time in a long time, I was excited to see what came next